So I was suicidal. I was on the floor of my dorm room and nobody was there, and I had a bottle of pills and I was just done. And I heard this light being say, "I love you." And I said back, I said, "Leave me alone. And I'm done. Just get out of here. Go away." And as soon as I said that, I was alone. I had the perception of being alone. I was in complete stillness. There was nothing. My name is Tammy Lee Anderson, and I'm here today to share my story of near death. I've had 3 near-death experiences. The first one, well, for the first 2 actually, were before the age of 6 months old. And so I experienced these near-death experiences as a baby. The first near-death experience was I was born not breathing. So I was blue, I was flat as a pancake because my mom was in labor for 38 hours, and I couldn't breathe apparently, and the cord was wrapped around my neck uh, tight enough where it cut the oxygen off, so I couldn't breathe. So they said, sorry, she didn't make it. And well, I made it. And here I am. So that first experience, um, I did not remember these first 2 near-death experiences until I was 17 years old. And then it just came flooding back. And this happened when I was sitting in a church, and a priest who had a gift of healing, and he offered to say a prayer for me, and I said, okay. And I didn't really know what to expect from him, but he put his hands on my head, and I just felt this heat, this warmth go through my whole body, and kind of landed in my stomach, and then just I felt this kind of like explosion of awareness, and I relived, re-experienced the first 2 near-death experiences as a child. And nobody had told me all the details. This was a reliving, a re-experiencing, and I do write about this. But the first one, what I experienced was just being in complete peace. I felt like I was bathed in this beautiful light and just incredible love. And it felt like home. It felt familiar. I felt like light beings were all around me. People that I knew, souls that I knew. And it just was incredibly peaceful and beyond words, really, because it's more an experience, feelings, emotions. I was aware, interestingly enough, I was aware of my mother's emotions, my father's emotions. I was aware of my grandparents there. I knew them. Anyways, so what happened was I was born not breathing, stillborn, and they revived me. And all I can say is I was aware of everything. It was like I had like 360-degree awareness here and there. I was aware of everyone. I was aware of the doctors. I was aware of all the emotions of them trying to get me going. And at the same time, I was just enveloped in this peace and this love, and like I was at home. And the next near-death experience happened when I was a little less than 6 months old. They were attempting to do a surgery. I was born 4 pounds, 3 ounces, and then I lost a pound, and so I went down to 3 pounds. So I was big enough, about this big, to fit, about big as a shoe. I could fit in a shoebox. They said I was so small. So What happened on the second one, I had to have a surgery because the soft spots in the head closed, and so they had to open that. And so basically, I had to cut my head open and create some space. And so, in order to do this surgery, the anesthesiologist had to give me anesthesia. Well, this because I was so small and sensitive, apparently, the anesthesia stopped my heart, and so I went out of my body again. And at this experience, I felt more beings of light around me, and I felt the contrast. I felt them trying to bring my heart back, and I had no desire to come back into that little body. It was like I wanted to stay in the light because that was home. It was just so peaceful, so loving. They shocked my heart with adrenaline, and they got it going again. Um, and all I can say, the contrast was incredible because I went from extreme love and peace and feeling home to feeling terror and the fear and the lights and the noise and the smell. Everything was like over exaggerated to my senses. Nowadays, with preemies, and when I was born, they didn't have prenatal care. It was just a small hospital, and usually babies this small would die. Um, but now they have a prenatal care. They put things over their eyes, and they're aware that the senses are quite overwhelmed by lights. But I just remember the bright lights and the contrast between the light of the operating room and the light of God, or whatever I want to call it, the light of love, is very different. That light is incredibly brilliant, but it's soothing, it's loving, it moves through every part of you. And this light here, it was very offensive to the to the senses. And so that was my experience. And I remembered all this at 17. It was like a flood. It was a re-experiencing. And when I shared this with my mom later, the tears started flowing because there's stuff that I told her about her own feelings that nobody would know. And so it was quite a shock for her as I told her these feelings and these emotions and what my experience was. It was a shock to both of us. I was wondering afterwards, that was supposed to be a healing prayer. I didn't feel healed. I felt like it was quite painful to actually remember all this and to re-experience this. And what the interesting thing was, some people after their near-death experiences, I've learned since, have depression, and I had depression all my life. And it was because I felt like I had missed something. And so I had childhood depression, and I had depression up till I was 23 years old after the passing of my brother. And I had another experience that was quite intense. I was always drawn to the quiet, to the silence, because I felt like I could connect to God there. I could connect to that which is bigger than this, and more expansive, more connection. And so I was always drawn to the silence and the quiet. And in this instance, I would go out into nature. I loved being in nature. And I would just go out by myself and be gone for a few days. In this instance, I was gone for about a week, and I was fasting. I was in the mountains, and I overdid it. I didn't eat for a week, and it was hot, and I didn't drink enough. So basically what happened is I collapsed from a heat stroke, and I was out of my body immediately. And what happened was I just felt like I was in this tunnel they describe. I was going towards the light, and there were uncountable souls moving towards this light, and I was just one of them. And we were all moving towards this light. And the interesting thing about the tunnel, it wasn't like constrictive like an earth tunnel. It was like the edges had no boundaries. but what made it like a tunnel is because the light was in front, and everybody was moving towards that light, and I was moving towards that light, and it was just like the light just moves through you, and it's just so beautiful and loving. And what I noticed then right in front of me was my grandfather. I saw his back, and it's not like I saw a physical back, it was the spiritual aspect of him because we're all light beings. And there were different color light beings. Not everybody was the same color. And so, but I saw my grandfather in front of me, and I said, Papa. And he turned around, and it was just like this coming together. My grandfather was quite quiet man, and it was a blending and you don't use words there, even though I was aware of using words. That wasn't at first. It wasn't the communication. The communication was happening not telepathically, even some people say it's telepathic. To me, it was like soul to soul, where there's a blending, um, and nothing is unknown. And it's just like this blending of love. And that was my experience with my grandfather. It was just so beyond what I can put into a word, but it was such a beautiful, and I can understand how we can get ourselves in such challenges on this earth because we're using words, and there's miscommunications because often words don't say what a person feels. It's just they're so inadequate. When I was with my grandfather and I asked him, I said, well, what's the real story of Jesus? Because I've heard a lot of things about him and I've read things, but I kind of have a feeling it's been distorted. And I would like to know the real man and the real person of Jesus. And what happened was when I looked into the eyes of Jesus, it was just like pure love, pure and gosh, what's the best way to put this? I just felt this connection, and I just started going into his light. And and at this time I wasn't religious, and so I wasn't brought up in a religion. I wasn't brought up Catholic or anything like this. At the time when I was experiencing this, though, I was looking into it, and that's where my curiosity came about Jesus, because I was trying to learn about what is he about. And I felt like I was going into this love and this all-enveloping light of him, and I did not. I was just going into that, and what happened was, I felt as I was going into this, I felt like I was dissolving, and that would have been fine with me. In fact, I hope to just dissolve and forget everything. And some people say I want to keep my character, but I really would just like to dissolve into the presence of God. And it is just so, yeah, amazing. So what I was experiencing, I was just going into dissolving into him, and then I felt this being of light, this beautiful being, and I'll just say she because I don't have any better way, but I didn't feel, male, female. I just felt this beautiful, amazing, beautiful being pull me to the side, like, come over here because you're going, and we need to communicate. So I got pulled to the side, and then I just started asking questions, like really, like everything I ever wondered about, like why do people suffer? Why do babies die? Why is there wars? And and often people after this, I tell this, they say, well, what was the answer? And it's like the answers were, um, overall, the answer is that everything is perfect, even the suffering, even the challenges of wars. Not that that's good in itself, but here as a human being, we have the opportunity for contrast. And we're here as spirit beings expanding love. And it's an experience of contrast so that we can bring our light into the darkness. And so we experience really challenging things in our lives. Everybody does, some more than others. But we have an opportunity to choose love the best we can. And sometimes we don't do such a great choice, but we're learning and we're expanding and we're growing. And by that growing, we're stretching love, because we are that which we seek. We are the essence of God. We are a face of that, that we desire so much. We're that. So we're an expression, a unique expression of God, and we're expanding love here just by having the experience of contrast. So people ask me, well, what was the answer? The answer is hard to fit in one sentence why they're suffering. But the short answer is it allows us contrast to stretch our ability to love and to choose love again and again and again. And from different points of view, from different perspectives. So as I was asking these questions, I felt like I was asking with my words, and then all of a sudden I realized I didn't have to ask with my words. Every time I thought a question, then I understood. So then I realized we were communicating soul to soul, and then all of a sudden this just big explosion of light, like particles of light, different colors, like were going through me. And every little bit of light felt like a download of information, of knowing, just ecstasy on top of ecstasy. It was just like, and like there was no limit to the filling up. And so what happened then was nobody asked me if I wanted to come back. Some people, they say, oh yeah, I had a choice. I was just all of a sudden back in my body. And what drew me back was the sound of a horse. And I know that sounds really strange, but it was strange to me at the time too. I found myself listening to the sound of a horse, and it just brought me back into the physical body, which was incredibly heavy, restrictive, because I came from an expansive state, really expansive, and then just like contracted into this form again. And it was heavy. It felt like molasses. It was just like, ugh. And I didn't want to be in that body at all. And I was just laying on the ground, and come to find out that the horse was over the mountain. He was way far away. So I don't know. It felt like he was actually breathing in my ear. I could feel the sound of the horse in my ear. I could feel the breath, but that horse was way far away. So I don't know how it all worked, but that's what drew me back into a physical form. And my attention was back on my physical experience, and it was quite dense. And at the time I thought, boy, I never want to do that again, just because it was so painful to be back into and I laid there for hours trying to get my strength. And by the time I started to move again, it was in the evening time where everything had cooled down, and it was just dusk, so it was just getting dark. I was able to, my body must have cooled down enough to recover from, but it took me days to feel my energy again, because it was so slow and dense. And so that experience was my third near-death experience, and bits and pieces have come back to my awareness over the years. Now, some people say that these near-death experiences changed their life and they're real different after. I can only say that I've been strange since the beginning. I don't have much to experience contrast, because I've had these near-death experiences as a baby. I can say that I've always had a inclination to bring healing and kindness and love. And I was aware at 7 years old I had an experience at 7 years old where I realized how just being here sometimes we cause injury, not purposely, but unconsciously. And I made the intention at 7 years old just to bring as much kindness and love as I could in this world. So my work has always had some aspect of healing. I became a counselor. I did body work for many years. It's always been some kind of healing work. I've worked with people in the streets, with the homeless. I've always been, service has always given me joy, to be of some service. You know, I thought, well, I want to do as much good as I can while I'm in this world. And that's what my life has been about. So let's see. Right after that third near-death experience, a few months later, ever since I was little, I've had precognitive knowings. I was especially aware of when people were going to pass, and this is something that I was aware of, but it's something that I didn't like, actually, because there was nothing I could do to change it. And so I had these feelings of people passing. I had it with my brother. I had it with my grandfather. I had it with people. I'd walk near them in a grocery store and I could feel their light. And I could feel them going into the light. I had an experience where this little girl, I got to know that priest. He was doing healing, and one day I went to see him, and he was having a meeting in the next room for a few minutes, and so I decided, I didn't know who he was going to see, but I decided to join my prayer with his for whoever he was seeing. Well, what happened is, all of a sudden this little girl was in front of me in spirit, and she was about 10 years old, and she said her name was Cassie. And I thought, well, that's a funny name, Cassie. It reminds me of like Lassie, like a dog, or I just was laughing I thought that was an interesting name. And I could feel Cassie going to the other world. I felt like she was passing soon, and she was very peaceful about it. And I didn't say anything to the priest afterwards because I didn't want him to think that I was just out of my mind, so I kept it quiet. But I did tell my sister, because she knows I've always had these experiences, and she's somebody I could tell. So I said, let's keep an eye on the newspaper the next few days because she's going to pass, and let's just confirm that. So we kept an eye on the paper, and sure enough, within the next few days, I think it was, we looked in the paper and there was Cassie, and her name, Cassie, was short for Catherine. I didn't know that at the time, but that was her nickname, Cassie. And she passed from cancer, and she was there to get healing prayer from the priest. And I felt so much peace. I never told the family about this because it wasn't my place to say anything. I just felt there was a connection. I was there at the right time, and she was very present and halfway in and halfway out, as best I can explain this. She was already on her way to the spirit world when we met. So ever since I was little, I've had these experiences. I could name numerous ones, but I won't make this too long. But with my brother, I was aware that he was passing for months before. Every time he'd turn around and walk away and I'd see his back, I felt this, felt like a punch in the stomach. I couldn't say anything, like my breath was being taken away, and I felt like he was going away and I wasn't going to see him again in this form. And there was nothing I could do. And I felt helpless, and I didn't like knowing this. And but I did. And my brother and I went to lunch um, several months before he passed. It was a Mexican restaurant in Ventura, California, and I still remember that day very clearly. And I shared with him my near-death experience in the mountains. And we weren't brought up in a religious family, but he listened very intently, and he listened to the experience, and I just felt this peace in him. And he just said to me without any, there was just simplicity in his response. And he said, I believe in God. And there was no theology, no, like, anything about it. Just, it was like a child saying, I believe there's more. And, and I said to him, I don't know what it's all about, but I do know there's more to it than what appears to be. Well, a few months later, he passed in a car accident, and that was just a really challenging day. And I felt like I was in a daze most of the day, because when he got on his motorcycle to go to his friend's house, he didn't have his helmet, and I said, "Where's your helmet?" And he said, "Oh, okay, I'll go get it." So he went and got his helmet. He had his visor up, and he goes, "Goodbye, I love you." And I couldn't say anything. I felt like somebody punched me in the stomach and took my breath away. And I just watched him. I couldn't say I love you. I couldn't say nothing. I was just like, it was such a dazed feeling. And I just watched him drive away. And I did see him again when I got my parents' car and we drove around the corner to his friend's house. And my brother and him were standing in front of the house, and they were getting ready to get in the car. His 16-year-old friend, his dad had given him a Porsche for his 16th birthday, and this is a car that's hard to handle for an adult, but let alone a kid. So my brother liked to go fast too. There's no blame here. But they both got in the car and they took off into the mountains. Well, he couldn't hold the curve. My brother was in the passenger seat, and they hit a tree, and my brother was gone instantly. What happened was, I was at my parents' house and the phone call came, and they don't tell you anything on the phone. But when the phone rang, before my mom answered it, I said, Ron's dead. And it was like, I wished I hadn't said it, because my parents went into a pure panic. And it just kind of came out. And so they had to wait, until they got to the hospital, find out for sure. And it was just a terrible day. if it's the worst of the worst. And those details, I mean, if you've gone through grief, you know that it's just a shock to the whole system, and the whole world falls apart. And you wonder how, life keeps going when life just stopped, and it's a very surreal feeling. And so a few days after, my brother came back in full form. He was on my porch as I walked to my house, and I just looked at him and I said, I can't handle this right now. It was too overwhelming. It's hard to put into words, but I just couldn't handle it. It was, the grief was really deep, and I just said, I can't do this right now. And he just went away really fast as soon as I said that. But that night he came back, because he had a message for me, and he came back, and it's like a dream, but it was way more than a dream. And he was talking to me, and he was laughing, and he was very much at peace, and he was just laughing. He goes, well, you're right about one thing. Like everything else, you can't even imagine, because it's too big to even put into a words. And I said, well, what? And he said, you're right about one thing. And I said, what? And he said, there's more to it than what appears to be. And I always remember that to this day, because for all our knowing in a human mind, we can't even come close to the bigger picture of the love and the peace, and just the extent of who we really are as beings. And so we try to make sense of it, and that's why I'm sharing the story, because it seems to bring peace to people to know that there is more, and we are more. And Yeah, but to put it to our mind is just, it's not going to fit. It has to be bigger. And so all I can say is I do know in my heart that we don't need a near-death experience to experience this. That each one of us has access to this aspect of who we are by going into the silence, going into the peace, and just breathing there. Let that breathe you as you sit in the quiet, and don't try to reach, because there is no reaching. There's no going out, there's no going there. It's just go within and just breathe in the light and breathe out the light. And let your mind do what it does, but take your focus on your breath and breathe in the light and breathe out the light. Breathe in peace, breathe out peace, and just let go. Surrender into that light, and you'll begin to experience this. And the thing is, it's important to take the trying out. Because when you're trying, you're in the trying. You're in the grasping. There is no pushing, nor pulling, no grabbing. You just let go, completely let go. And that's in that you'll have a glimpse of the expansiveness of all of it. You'll have a glimpse of that love. And I'm sure that most every person that's listening to these programs has had these experiences in glimpses. And that's what we get when we're in a body. We get glimpses of it. And we're here for a human being experience. We're here for the contrast. And we're here to bring our light, our unique light as a face of God, into the present moment when things are the darkest. Bring your light there. And bring your kindness there. Bring your compassion. Bring your forgiveness there. You know, we're in a time now when the world's challenged, and we're apparently breaking into a new version of ourselves as human beings, and it can be chaotic. And I just say, bring your light, present now. Be the peace in the midst of the storm. Be the kindness in the midst of the chaos. Bring that aspect of you. And it's not about being the big teacher on the mountain. It's being that light in the moment with whoever you're in front of. It could be a family member, it could be a friend needing a kind word that day. It could be somebody, you know, as you're going through the grocery line, saying a smile. You don't even have to say anything, but bringing that presence of you. It's more presence of you rather than a word. But sometimes it's a word, it's gentle kindness. But bring that aspect of you into the present. That's what we're here for, to bring our light. That's our purpose. People ask, what's my purpose? Your purpose is to love, to bring that aspect of God into this moment right now, right here. Love the person that's right in front of you, whatever shape or form that takes, you know. And so let me move into what happened after my brother's death. I super depressed. I went into one of the deepest, darkest depressions that I've ever had, and I was suicidal. I went back to university. I was studying theology and philosophy at the time, and I went back to school, trying to go back into normal life. But nothing, everything was but normal, and I just couldn't get out of the depression. That thought of, what if I would have said something different? Could I have stopped this? Could I have said something different that would have changed the direction of the experience? And at that moment, I was overwhelmed by that feeling. At this time, though, I realized nothing would have changed it. I was seeing something that was going to happen in the future, and in a sense, there's no stopping that. And people often say, well, is there no free will if we can see time? Yes and no. Yes and no. And when you're out of time, you see the whole picture of it. We're in time, so we still have a choice. We're still choosing, we're making choices. To the extent that we're conscious, we're making free will choices. To the extent that we're not conscious, we're just on automatic. And we're going with our programming. And all of us drops into a story. We drop into a lineage. We drop into many generations. And here we are trying to bring our consciousness, our light into this story of these generations. Our work is to realize, to bring consciousness light into that story for many generations forward and back, believe it or not. So free will, that's a yes and a no. And it's interesting because a lot of these questions that people ask, there is both a paradox of yes and no. It's not just one or the other. So I was suicidal. I was ready to commit suicide. I was on the floor of my dorm room and nobody was there, and I had a bottle of pills and I was just done. I was exhausted. I was just wanted to go back into the light, into peace, and not do this anymore, you know. And I've always felt guided in my life. I've always felt the light in my life. I've always felt, if you want to call them light beings or angels, I've always felt their presence ever since I can remember. And I heard this light being say, "I love you." And I said back, I said, "Leave me alone. Leave me alone. And I'm done. Just get out of here. Go away." And as soon as I said that, I was alone. I had the perception of being alone. I was in complete stillness and there was nothing. It was dark, and there was absolutely nothing. And it was peaceful, it was loving, but there was nothing. And I was just aware of nothing. No thing. It was like the best I can describe, because there are no words to describe this state of being. It was like pre-creation, when there was no things, there was nothing. It was just consciousness and stillness. And I said, "Oh no," and I want to be part of the creation. I want to create. I'm quite creative. I love to create. I love, you know, I've done martial arts for over 40 some years, and I love the not knowing and the learning, and learning again and practicing. And it's like riding a bike. It'd be awful boring if you just got on a bike and you know how to ride it. You take some joy in the learning and the experience of the falling and the getting back up. That's the fun of it. If we were all the best Mozarts and piano players in the world, automatically it would be like, what's the fun in that? So it's the fun, is the joy, is the creation. I love to create things. I love to, and I know I'm not alone in that, and so it's that aspect that I wanted to be part of. And that was the first time that I was actually very, very aware of wanting. I wanted to be a creator. I want in this world. And so I in that instance, I chose to return. It was instant. I said, no, I want to be back. And from that day on, I never had depression again, because I felt like I was consciously choosing to be a human being. I was consciously choosing to be a creative being in this realm of possibilities and this realm of contrast. And I'm here for that experience 100%. And I know it's temporary, and I love that aspect, of it too. The illusion that we could actually die. We can't, but we're under the illusion that we can, that there's no such thing as death, you know. There's an aspect of us that has never been born and will never die, but we get to have the opportunity of dying, which is, you know, it's an illusion that we will actually, you know, not be anymore, but we are eternal. But to have that experience of feeling like, oh, you know, I'm gonna die, you know, it's the contrast is a gift, believe it or not, you know. And so it is all a gift of God, all of it. So there's some of the stories. I've had lots more, and I've written a lot more. And I just finished a book. I never wanted to write a book, I'll tell you that. It's a lot of work. And I didn't think the world needed another book, but people kept asking me to tell more, and they wanted more from me. So I did. It took me almost 2 years, and I did write a book. It's called Into Love, and that's what it's all about. And there you go. And Suzanne Giesman did the forward to the book, and she said it felt more like, she couldn't put it down, and she said it felt more like a transmission. And so I write these stories, but in order to inspire you in your own story and your own coming home and surrendering to that love that's within. So you can read more about that if you like, and you can contact me if you like. I love to meet people, and I have sessions for mediumship, for healing. I love doing healing, and I love doing mediumship, and especially when it's helping people through grief. And then I also have mentoring, so people can just come with any questions they like. So there's 3 different possibilities, and you can get a hold of me through my website that way and sign up for a session if you want more of me. And so there you go. Healingwellness.com is the website, sorry. Healingwellness.com. And the book is called Into Love.